Hello, and welcome to this bonus episode of the Talk About Script podcast. With me, as always, is the What We Do in the Shadows stand-in, Charlie Carthy.
Hello.
We haven't got Ali this week, but we are going to talk about Nosferatu and a little bit about vampires in general. So we both went to see Nosferatu, which is, of course, being inspired by the kind of 1920s version of the movie, which was then remade again in 1979. But this is kind of Eggers' take on it. So a director known for being very visually striking, a little bit left field. So it's a really interesting kind of vibe. So if we start with it kind of from an aesthetic point of view, Charlie, what did you think about it?
Having not seen the 1920s version, heard about it so much, and it's the example of German expressionism, and inspiring vampire designs and stories so much. I thought this one was really cool, really good. Definitely very German, definitely very Robert Eggers, because I loved Robert Eggers' style, like filming style and lighting style used in things like The Lighthouse.
It's very close to the style of The Lighthouse, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was hoping to see, and like lots of long cast shadows, lots of rim lighting, and silhouetting, which there was. Incredible sound design in it as well. Especially for Count Orlok. Is it Orlok or
Orlok? I think
Orlok?
it is.
Yeah.
Orlok is Lemony Snicket.
Oh, what could have inspired that design? But yeah, the sound, the breathing. It was like, yeah, it was like Darth Vader.
Yeah, they kind of completely dehumanized the vampire, didn't they? It was very animalistic.
Yeah. And I love that it was a proper horror show. It was a proper monster horror show. Not in the gruesome slasher kind of way. This was unsettling. It was dread. It was full of dread. And the Count's presence was, you could feel it everywhere. And so I really liked that.
There's a kind of, I did notice very early on, there's a kind of creeping dread implied in camera work as well. Yeah. There's a lot of that kind of gentle tracking in.
Yeah.
Tracking out, that kind of something's following you, something's watching you at all times.
Yeah.
Invading spaces. I
noticed that, like, especially in the early parts of the film, like the camera moves so slowly and so steadily that it's almost like it's trying to make you think it's peaceful, but trying to make you think that, and then you see the long clawed shadow of the shadow of a long clawed hand creeping past the curtain with nothing there. Like, again, the lighting and shadow play that accompanies that like slow creeping camera movement.
It's a little bit of it reminded me a little bit weirdly with that movement of It Follows, where you've just got this persistent malice.
Yeah.
That is just gradually, not gently, but kind of slowly stalking, but you know inevitably it's going to appear.
Yeah. So I really loved that. I loved the design of the Count. Like you said, it's dehumanizing him.
Yeah.
Vampire, like I'm one of those guys, like, I don't like vampires being sexy. Vampires shouldn't be sexy. Like, they are monsters. They are beasts. And this is a walking, rotting corpse that is somehow still existing.
Very dynamic, isn't it? It's that kind of more of a demon than a misplaced soul or something like that.
Yeah. And it's what I always thought of, like, remembering the first time I read Dracula and the first few chapters, like all of the Jonathan Harker in the castle at Transylvania, all of those meetings. That's sort of the image I had of him of Dracula in my head. So I was really glad to see this, and I was really glad how little we get to see of him.
Yeah, it's handled quite well with the show. It's very that kind of German expressionistic style of everything being hidden away and kind of in the shows, which obviously then went on to influence noir, where everything is hidden and kind of secretive.
Yeah. And simple camera framing and lighting tricks.
Yeah. Beautiful kind of composition is excellent throughout as well. I have to say, I was probably the cinema I saw it in where they don't turn the lights off properly was a little bit washed out the colours a bit. I didn't. So sometimes it's in black and white, isn't it? And sometimes it's just in a really low colour palette. Or am I mistook with that? Is that just?
I didn't think any of it was in black and white.
So not fully black and white.
No, but like you said, it's monochrome.
Yeah.
Like it will just be blue.
Yeah.
It'll just be like pale blue.
Or
it'll just be like fiery golden. So still very mono. And then out in the streets during the daytime, it's very grey.
Yeah.
It's incredibly muted when you see the trying to remember the name of the village or the town that they're in. That the town that is German and definitely not meant to be Exeter.
Oh yeah.
Because that's from the book, and this is not the book.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is incredibly muted. Everything is drained of its color, and it gets further along like that as the film and the Count's. I guess his feasting on it, his feeding, almost like he's bleeding the city dry.
Yeah, so representation of generally speaking, throughout cinema, vampires represent various kind of fears of the time or societal fears of the time. So the original Nosferatu was quite heavily criticised, and there you can read it as kind of it has this kind of anti-Jewish sentiment, a kind of fear of the other, kind of Jewishness encroaching on Christianity. There's something to do with the design of the vampire and things like that. You've got one set, so like
Does that have any link to like the fact that he's Romanian as well?
Yeah, it's all that. It's those strange people from over there are coming over here kind of vibe and taking over. Weird. That kind of thing, which is then has been used and obviously weaponized by various parts of society ever since. But horror movies, this is not a new thing in horror. I mean, horror generally does try and utilize societal fears in order to scare people. So you have this repeated throughout. So, for instance, The Lost Boys is a kind of fear of breaking traditional family values. You basically get a boy who's given this kind of hedonistic homosexual lifestyle choice, and in the end he kind of decides to pick the girl and the family. You have it with both Bram Stoker's kind of adaptation by Ford Coppola and with Blade, where you have the vampire as a kind of sexual transmitted disease, in a sense.
Yeah.
Or something like a virus that needs to be kind of wiped out. Then, of course, you go through vampires kind of get less scary and start trying to be sexy, things like Twilight and stuff like that. And, until you get around stuff like...
Twilight. Twilight is like... I mean, it's... I've heard a lot of talk about that. It's basically the allegory for chastity and Christian, especially in the Bible Belt states. And that approach towards teen, especially teen romance and sex and the lack of, the abstinence from it. And it's almost like they're afraid of sex.
Well, the first time she has sex, she gets pregnant and dies.
Yeah.
So, that you can read into that what you will, that kind of subtle reading.
Yeah.
And then it takes kind of a long route back until we get to kind of TV shows like True Blood, where they go, right, how do we make vampires actually scary again? And then you kind of have this kind of manipulative sexuality where you almost weaponize their power over people through the fact that they are completely irresistible and stuff like that.
Not forgetting Interview with a Vampire.
Yes.
Always deals with that. I mean, I can't think of what it would be a fear of, but it is. But it's such like, because it's so clearly about abusive relationships and being controlling and being controlled, and I guess the fear of that controller.
Yeah.
That leaves these immortal, like these lasting scars that do last forever, as these vampires do.
Unfortunately, I didn't see. I haven't read into Interview of a Vampire. I'm sure there's something in there that I can dig into, but it'll be to do with hierarchical structure and control and all that kind of influence and all that kind of stuff.
The recent BBC remake was really good for that. Especially because I already knew the Tom Cruise.
Yeah, which is excellent.
But this one, I forget the actor's name. It's Grey Worm from Game of Thrones.
Okay.
But yeah, they're it's telling the story from the black person from New Orleans perspective. So yeah, it still gets that hierarchical. Yeah, that navigating the hierarchical structure of both society at the time, 1800s, and vampires.
I mean, there's obviously other vampire movies around as well, like Catherine Bigelow's Near Dark is excellent. But there was a bit of a gap, and then you kind of get movies like Pitch Black, which isn't really have vampires, but it just kind of completely turns. You have these kind of night-feeding creatures, so it's almost like, hey, we've made vampires too attractive, so we're going to have to do something to completely strip them back and turn them into their kind of base element again and make them more animalistic.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really wanted to get into it, you could also start arguing The Descent has similar type creatures, but that's kind of a bit of a stretch in some ways.
But they never labeled them as vampires.
No, but it's just night dwellings,
yeah,
feeding predators is basically what you have to completely take away any form of sexuality from them in order to find them scary. So with regards to that, when we come to Nosferatu, something which kind of hit me. So there's obviously the scene where the ship hits the dock.
Yeah.
And all the plague rats come out. Effectively infect the city with the plague. So we're in 2025, and for me, this is kind of a bit of a reading of kind of having having vampire as kind of this playing on the fear of pandemic of what we've just been through and come out of. So it's more than just disease, it's like widespread pandemic, which is an interesting take. I'd be interested to see what Egger's kind of thoughts are with regards to that.
Yeah, I didn't think about this until he brought it up with me earlier. But considering the account is, he's been in isolation, the complete isolation for God knows how many years, centuries, and then as soon as he steps out, he brings plague with him. And of course isn't sorry about it.
No.
Yeah. And even I guess the progress of the other characters to understand it, like I've got to just refer to the Dracula names, but
yeah, that's fine.
The Dr. Seward character, the one played by Ralph Ineson, his role in the book is trying to understand Dracula, this beast that is preying on people. But in this, trying to understand the madness, trying to understand the plague, his hospital getting overwhelmed. Now that you mention it, it is quite clear. It's very, very familiar.
Yeah, it's interesting, and also the way they treat Lily Rose Depp's character. Obviously, you had the whole how she summons the creature and all this kind of thing. But in terms of the ending, it's almost like, it's creating an antidote almost. Effectively through her transfusing her blood to the vampire, it ends up in the vampire then being kind of cast out or kind of blighted by the sun, which then destroys the plague. So it's kind of like, hey, we've found an antidote in someone's blood. So, but there's definitely a reading there. I mean, there's more to it as well, because obviously the vampire is treated more like a demon. Weirdly, for a Dracula story, though, there is religion in there, but it's not massively mentioned, is it? There's one guy wearing a crucifix. But
the crucifixes keep coming up, but I feel like it was, it's because I just kept comparing it to the book. I mean, as a big summary of this film, it's my favorite adaptation of the book. Like, I think one of the most faithful ones. Definitely the most faithful one in the last 40 years.
There haven't been that many adaptations, really, though, have there? Not
Not
book
directly.
adaptations. Obviously, Full Coppola's is the most high profile.
High profile,
better or worse.
But yeah, we have differing thoughts about that. But this, like, I knew all the story beats and I recognized everything that was going to happen because it was following the book. And the professor, when they finally get Professor Van Helsing, that character, played brilliantly by Willem Dafoe. I could watch an entire series of him wildly explaining alchemy and the occult. But yeah, he always used garlic and crucifixes as, you know, basically as weapons, almost like pest control.
Yeah.
With all the victims, with all of the, you know, when they hunt Dracula in the book, when they hunt Dracula and pick out all the coffins, it's bless it with, I think it was like one of the holy wafers, like the communion wafers, and holy water and then fire, you know, burning it. It's not like we're doing this in the name of God. We're just using the power of God to fight you.
Yeah. There's less of that in here, though, isn't there? It's made. There's not so much. There's when he's on his travels. Obviously, the gypsy people are covering everything in garlic and stuff before you get that kind of night of his lucid dream, stroke vision, stroke thing that actually happened. But when it comes to back on kind of German soil, as it were, there's not an awful lot of holy. I mean, there's not even a priest, is there, involved in any of that? It's just kind of...
Yeah.
It's just the Doctor and Van Helsing characters just kind of wandering around with torches and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'd never felt a need to see the religious presence, but it might have been nice to have seen, like, I don't know.
Well, I just think it's telling if we're looking at it from a medical point of the vampire being a pandemic, a plague, that they effectively remove the religious aspect from it, because the only one who does have it is the Doctor. But then it gets to the point where he disbelieves it. He believes something else is going on. So even then, he kind of puts that to one side. So they go completely down there. You've basically got the alchemist and the Doctor taking on the pandemic, effectively.
Yeah. So I'm just picturing now, like, Van Helsing coming in and saying, like, you need to drink bleach and
put a mask on.
No, don't like they're doing certain people's solutions of like drinking a bit of bleach or a bit of window cleaner.
Yeah.
A glass full of that and some lemon. and COVID won't get you. You'll be fine. You clear it out of your system.
While he's making his potions.
Yeah. Just saying that wildly, like he knows it's a fact, while the actual, like the established man of science is going, no. Like that doesn't work like that. But yeah, no, but I like that. I like that take on it. Fear of pandemic. Yeah. The meaning that I really took from the film, like going back to talking about Lily Rose Depp, her character, she was amazing in it.
I'm less amazed.
All the body horror.
Yeah.
Like contortions, poses, expressions. Her and the VFX team that helped with that. Yeah, it was unsettling, and I couldn't take my eyes off it.
She was quite magnetic.
I loved that. So, about the meaning that I took from the film. It's the one thing that I don't like from like romanticized vampires is this idea of predestined love between the monster, the beauty and the beast, so to speak. Especially the fact that it's preordained, because it's got such a weak chosen one sort of idea behind it. When again, these are monsters. They're beasts. They hunt. But at least this film sort of takes. I mean, the meaning it seemed to convey was a fear of female sexuality or sexual expression. The only good character that isn't a female character that isn't, I guess, sick until she is the mother.
Yeah, they want the family.
The family one, but the mother from that. Whereas the just married and more sexually frustrated character is the one that, through her sexual desire, summons the demon.
She's one cursed object away from it being a supernatural horror movie, isn't she?
Yeah.
Like, it's like the parents should have been paying attention. They summoned a horny demon.
Yeah. Not a fan of that, especially that it's like, oh, that's why a town is suffering. And the only cure for it is marriage.
Yeah. Or in this case, her death.
Yeah. Well, marriage was the stopgap.
Yeah.
And then the actual cure was death. But death through having sex.
Yeah. Well,
again, incredibly unsettling. I couldn't stop watching it, but it was like, this is horrifying. Like,
it's a strong scene, isn't it?
It is. If anybody is wanting to watch this, do be warned. It felt very assaulty.
Yes.
To me.
What is the rating? I can't remember. Was it 15 or 18?
I think it was a 50.
Is it 15? Probably is.
Probably is. I would have called it an 18. I would say, but I'm guessing it's 15. Yeah, it's nothing overtly gory or again sexual about it, but it's just, it feels like predatory.
Yeah, it's
beastly
very
predatory and assaulty, and it's not just on Lily Rose Depp, but her character, but also earlier Nicholas Holtz.
Yes.
You get this flash of the Count feeding on him, and it's just the flash of the Count naked, like over, like just like perched over Nicholas Holtz's body and drinking the blood.
Yeah.
That, well, after he's been like crying, scared of this thing. Yeah, absolutely monstrous. Incredibly well shot and edited for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a bit of a trigger warning.
He is a scary dude, that Nosferatu.
Yeah, and it feels like that's that the fact that all of that started because of a woman's sexual desires or loneliness. Yeah. Not a great message.
No, but I think it's
fitting of the time.
It's trying to play in with it's trying to critique the time, isn't it?
Yeah,
that kind of message. I mean, there are. I know it's been received very well. I think there are. The more you dig into it, there are some kind of flaws in there.
Yeah,
but it's still a very kind of brave attempt at telling this kind of twisted story.
Yeah, and at least for since loads of vampire stories try and use this. Again, predestined love or desire from the monster, from the vampire to the main, the main woman. At least they use this well, like that trope well, to close out the story with it.
Yes.
It's my biggest pet peeve. It's my biggest pet peeve about the Coppola film.
Oh yeah, no, I know
that entire idea, but but at least this actually used it really well, and it wasn't a major feature of the film.
No, my biggest issue is that could they not have just gone to? They knew where they knew where he was. Could they not just have gone there in the daytime and burnt it? I don't know, but
I think the idea was, I mean, it's a very condensed version of what happens in the book, but it's Harker, Seward, and Van Helsing go on a hunt to destroy the Dracula's coffin, containing the earth from his home, and it's the only place he can rest before the sun comes up. But they try and catch him when he's out so that he can't fight back.
Yeah.
That's the other danger, I guess. Because you got to fight the monster in its own lair.
Yeah.
Versus,
get it in daytime though.
but again, in its own lair, where there's no sunlight coming in anyway. But if you get him with when he's out on a hunt and he's got no refuge, then like that was part of the Van Helsing character reading the lore about it was saying like, he must return to the earth of his home before the first cock crows.
I take it back as well because actually there's a scene in the castle where Nicholas Holt's character tries to do exactly that.
Yeah,
and it doesn't work. So
yeah,
no, there is they do kind of cover that ground.
Yeah, and in the book they do the same. They just go to like, Dracula's got like way more estates full of them. So it's just like, oh, and this one, 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 before they finally, have a face off with him. But yeah, it's just a condensed version of that.
Well, it's interesting because it plays in the only other thing I've seen. Well, no, it's not Dracula as plague, which uses this idea of pandemic or vampires as plague. Is actually the Castlevania anime.
Yeah,
where you see that it not only do you get Dracula, it spreads blight across the land wherever the vampires go. Kind of everything begins to rot and
just around them in their presence,
and just kind of but obviously with Castlevania you've got all sorts of demons and death itself and all this kind of stuff. But you see the villages where the kind of vampires have taken hold and they're all dying and diseased and it's that same kind of vibe.
Yeah,
weirdly.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, like you see it, like the use of the rats, and especially after you mentioned the ship crashing, the rats have come out, the plague is unleashed. You couldn't stop seeing rats everywhere.
Yeah, they were that was very cleverly done.
That was really cleverly done. It's all, and again, another reminder of just how omnipresent the Count always was.
Yeah.
He's always there and using the rats, looking through them, feeding through them. Feeding himself with it.
We're on a bit of a vampire renaissance at the minute, aren't we? I suppose because I'm not going to talk about it in great detail, but obviously we've had this. There was Abigail last year.
Yep.
Castlevania coming back.
What We Do in the Shadows has just finished. Finished its final season. Which has been really good. Got a lot of praise for that. It's like they get it again.
We've gone through the cycle of making vampires scary again or manipulative or
just I guess interesting again.
No more glitter.
Yeah. Please no more glitter.
Surely we've got a BG Twilight remake scene. How long ago was that? They're already talking about remaking the Hunger Games, aren't they? I mean, Twilight can't be far behind.
Oh my god!
Maybe
let's not invite that opportunity.
A gritty TV show for Amazon Prime.
I mean, I would have suggested what about a series or a story about the vampires where like being hunted by humans, like trying to escape, like invert it the other way around. But there was a book and there was an attempt by that. I think about 20 years ago. I Am Legend.
And also you have the thing of what would happen if the vampires take over. I don't know if you've seen Daybreakers.
No,
which is basically everyone's a vampire and they're running out of human blood, and they have to like synthesize the blood, but it's not the same, and it starts making them go mad.
Oh my god!
Interesting take.
That would be interesting. That would be a good one. Like considering overpopulation, dealing with famine.
But also, no one dies.
And what happens when the population just keeps growing and growing and growing, and maybe showing disparity, like maybe not between wealth, but it's like wealth expressed by blood. The sort of blood supply
you can have. Daybreakers is a great film, by the way. It's really underrated, and I haven't seen it on anything for ages, but I think it's got Ethan Hawke in it. But yeah, it's an interesting take on it.
I remember the film coming out and thinking like, this looks rubbish and I don't need to watch this. This looks like one of those, like the Justin Timberlake "Time Is Money"
Yeah.
movie, or the Bruce Willis.
Was that In Time?
Yeah,
The one with
like
Matt
it was
Seyfried.
around that era, wasn't
Yeah.
it? And it was like, oh, not another one of these, but with vampires. Oh, I'll skip that. But
Yeah.
if it was actually good,
Surrogate. Oh god, there's a lot of those that almost work. Surrogates almost works. In Time, the big vehicle to try and make Amanda Seyfried an action heroine, didn't quite work. Dye her hair black. That'll do it. But yeah, no, Daybreakers is actually pretty cool, and they're kind of lower budget, interesting type of way. It's kind of Blade crossed with Children of Men, but not quite to the level of either of them.
Okay,
but it's worth watching.
But I like that. I like that idea.
Interesting concept.
And it must be, and it's been a long time now, at least since that's come out. So, when did it come out? That must have been around
Daybreakers.
Yeah,
it's 2000. I'm gonna say 2002.
Oh my
That's
god,
what I reckon. I could be wrong.
I'm just looking up 2009.
Oh, I'm well off.
Yeah, but still, I mean, 15 years.
Yeah,
That's a good time to look back on it.
It'll be out there somewhere. Boys and girls.
Yeah. But yeah, otherwise, what would be good? I'm thinking, what else would be good to rewatch?
I mean, True Blood's always good fun.
Yeah.
For those people who haven't seen it out there. I mean, the later seasons it goes absolutely crazy, but it's good fun. It's not high art, but there's some really cool kind of individual story arcs and bits, but it covers everything though. It does throw a lot. You don't just get vampires, you get ghosts and demons. And whatever. I mean, we're overlooking, of course, Buffy the Vampire Slayer as well.
Oh, of course.
If you want to take the teen kind of version of it. And obviously the film with Christy Swanson.
Yeah.
So, but that's again obviously a bit more of a playful kind of vibe.
I feel like with every good, genuinely scary or like depiction of vampires, like Nosferatu, or I guess like Abigail, I need a silly one or a fun one. That still has the love for the vampires.
Yeah, Abigail is a great one to watch actually because it does something different with vampires. The idea of vampire control is handled really well in Abigail. It's really, really bloody as well. It's definitely an 18. It's a really cool little take on both the kind of heist or reverse horror movie, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, I really enjoyed that. It's quite cool. Well worth checking out.
Yeah, but then I guess like God, it's been so long since I watched Buffy. I'm trying to remember actually anything that happened in it, and I can't.
Everything happens in Buffy that teenagers have to deal with.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like everything happened, and it was just so ever present when I was a kid.
Yeah,
and I never looked at it since it finished.
Most of it holds up. It's on one of the streaming services. I can't remember which one because I remember I watched the whole thing.
It's gonna feel like watching it brand new again.
Yeah, most of it holds up. There are certain arcs. Some of the seasons are a bit weaker than others, but there's a lot of issues you look back and go, oh right, okay, yeah, you know.
But it's why since What We Do in the Shadows finished, I need something else lighthearted like that.
Yeah.
One good thing about Nosferatu, just on that, I know we've spoken about What We Do in the Shadows before, but I just think you mentioned the 1920s Nosferatu being more humanized and more otherized. One of my favorite characters in the film, What We Do in the Shadows, Peter, the Nosferatu vampire who lives in the basement, who's just a lovely guy. He looks like a monster, but he's just the loveliest guy. And who barely says anything, but everyone gets along with him so well. I was like, oh, that's why they do that. Like, because again, having not seen it, Nosferatu, I recognized it, but I didn't see it.
The original Nosferatu is on YouTube now, I think, because it's copyright free.
Oh, is it? What is it?
So you can watch it on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
If you want to watch it, obviously a silent film.
Yeah. That's okay. It's one of those great ones that you kind of have to. Like, I guess, on the same lines as Metropolis. Or
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting take on it. I mean, I wouldn't watch it every day,
No.
but it's definitely got its moments, and artistically, it's good. You can definitely see the influence here as well. Yeah.
But yeah, Nosferatu, the new one, the new Robert Eggers, definitely got me back into enjoying vampires again.
Yeah. I mean, we should probably sum this up. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely something different. I think it's different to what Eggers has done before as well. In a lot of ways, I think it's closest to The Lighthouse in terms of style.
Yeah.
And
Visually, it definitely is. Yeah, and theme. I mean, it's all of his films a bit about this like ever-present danger.
Yeah.
The monster is always there. With the Vitch, the Lighthouse, and now Nosferatu.
Yeah.
Which I really loved. And yeah, just I hope other filmmakers let their monsters be monstrous.
Yeah. And also, I mean, again, this is a great example of studios not taking too much control away from their directors, because it has actually made money.
Yeah.
Because it's different, it's unique. How it will last over the years is obviously hard to tell, but I'd expect it to get a little bit of award recognition in various areas. And it's a brave film. It tries something. It's not trying to be, it's quite an uncool film in a way. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
It's very old-fashioned in a lot of ways. I mean, I could argue, I think Lily Rose Depp overdoes it a little bit at times. Other times she's brilliant. And the story itself maybe is a little bit loose in places, a little bit rushed or a little bit not as nuanced as it could be. But in terms of style and dread and kind of creeping dread, it works wonderfully well.
As an experience for a monster film to watch.
Yeah.
Would you recommend?
Yes. I definitely think people should see it. Go and see it in a proper cinema though that actually turns the lights off properly.
Yeah.
I went
to the same cinema on a different night, and they did properly shut off the lights.
Oh.
It was overly busy, but yeah, go see it in a proper cinema. Like, get the experience of sitting there, watching it, getting spooked, just it's well worth it.
Definitely. Right, I think we'll wrap it there. So thank you for listening to our little special on Nosferatu while we still try and work out what we're going to look at properly next.
Yeah, and well, there's more Oscar films coming out that we'll both need to see.
We're going to have to either do some kind of Oscar roundup or predictions or something like that. We'll see how much
as the road leads up to it.
But I'm not watching 3.5 hours of The Brutalist in a cinema, so we'll have to see how that goes. So
yeah,
but we'll see how it goes. Maybe we'll look back on previous winners or something like that. Okay, so until next time, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.